If you think of it from an income perspective, obviously, if you lose a customer, that means you wouldn't be having the income from that customer. So actually, there's a huge cost of failure and creating bad customer experiences. So I think you can look at that. And then I think you've also got that huge efficiency saving exactly on the cost point of view, which is actually digitising and making sure that you can execute excellently means that you can actually do it without the failure. And that means that you've got a lower cost process at the same time.
There's things that we do as an organisation that you couldn't write a business case for in other organisations. If you can do the right thing for your customers, if you can attract customers and keep them, over the long term, that for me is the right thing to do. But too often, big organisations work on, annual P&L cycles. And that's not the way customers think, is it?
Again and again and again, people say that the solution is customer education, and I actually think that customer education is just not going to get us where we need to get fast enough. And that's why when I spoke earlier about the asymmetry, I think that that's where kind of culture and ethics become so important, because a temptation would be to exploit perhaps the lack of financial literacy, also all of those other behavioural biases, which is that people get bored by financial matters. They don't like to think about getting older. They'd prefer to be down the pub, whatever. So therefore, I think that the point about culture, which I think, Julian, you mentioned, Ian, you talked about too, Chris, you talked about too, it's good that all of our bankers are aware of the importance of culture and ethics, because it has to be just designed into the products. You can't rely on the customer being able to, for example, understand percentages or to be able to kind of work out how much an overdraft is really going to cost them.
Obviously, care very deeply about customers and thinking about vulnerable customers, and I think that you have to think of it in two different types of environment. You've got, I think, from a face-to-face or over the telephone, you've got to make sure that your colleagues or partners really understand different situations and are able to recognise some of those different types of customer and how to help and recognise those things. But also there's a real challenge in that digital space of how do you start to identify who might be vulnerable. It's now about saying let's really make sure we've understood people's needs, and some people's needs because they're in a vulnerable position, we need to be extra careful but be able to identify them and be extra sure we're doing the right thing.
The government says there's not enough financial education going on for children. The FCA says there's not enough financial education going on for children. There's not many people stepping into the gap. We, like other organisations here, I'm sure, are very community focused. There's a lot of work to do, and there's far more people who need education than we can provide to. But we absolutely think it's part of our moral duty to make sure people understand what they're doing. In the physical channels, so in store and on the telephone, there's two things we do. We have a manager on the floor all the time, and the manager is trained to spot customers' emotions. You can tell. You can tell when somebody's not happy, either when they're in the store or when they're leaving the store, and the manager's job is to intervene and find out what the issue is and fix it. And in the call centre, the technology we use, so it's all human-based calls, it's all people, but actually we run technology in the background that alerts key trigger words that brings the supervisor, to the colleague, into the call if necessary to help. You can't spot it 100% of the time, but actually you find out very quickly if there's a common issue in the organisation. If the organisation is agile enough, it can fix it really, really quickly.
The key is if someone is expressing their dissatisfaction, you want to make sure that whatever channel that is, you're able to react in the right way. It's not necessarily data in a branch. But I think in digital, you're right, that's something we probably need to think through more.